go.
We're going to call this meeting to order at 9:17. And so welcome everyone. Great to see everyone. We're going to start with our approval of minutes. So these are the minutes from our October 15th, 2020 Communications Subcommittee meeting. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
I'll make a motion. This is Sharon that we approve.
Okay. And a second?
Second, sorry, second, Ellen.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstention? All right, so we're going to move on to some subcommittee updates. And Scott isn't able to be here because we have a session going on with one of our attorneys. So he needs to be there for some training. And so I do have some questions that I'm just going to exit full screen and go to the questions about the video, just some clarifying questions. So music sound bed is being replaced. So I think that was, it's not a technical issue. It's more just the selection. The track we have in place was used in previous videos, but that's going to be changing. There was a question from Evan. Are there more details regarding what needs to be fixed with the amphitheater, music, and gym segments? That was one of the questions. And then a statement regarding the absence of masks with a graphic will be at the start of the video. So if there aren't masks, it was because it was prior to COVID, and we'll just make that clear. And then they're going to break the video up into two components. And a single video at this point is easier to, okay. We will remove this. There was something about the special education segment, and that's not going to be in there. And some of removal of educational jargon. There'll be some re-recording of the voiceover for the auditorium segment. Let's see. And then, okay, so that was it. So I guess the question was there any other details regarding what needs to be fixed in the amphitheater, music, and gym segments? Does anyone remember?
I don't remember specifically. I remember the change, I think, had to do with some, I think there was a question about what it meant. I don't remember what the term was, but the fact that we had no center aisle. There was something, we had questions. I don't think we needed clarification on the terminology around that or something, if I remember correctly. Did we specifically say, or maybe we had a conversation too about whether that, that there were missing seats and those kind of things. I'm not sure if we specified that, outright in the video. So maybe that's what he's thinking.
Yeah, maybe that's it.
I think not the amphitheater, but I remember in the auditorium, one of the things that I think we wanted to highlight was the missing seat. So Megan, you're right.
Yeah.
And I don't think that was
in there.
That was shown, and that's a biggie.
I just, yeah, and emphasizing the production quality.
Right.
Here kids are doing such a fabulous job, but then when the acoustics are so bad, and it's really difficult then to have the quality that we want. And in that performance space.
Yeah, so I remember vaguely the discussion about the auditorium, and it had to do with the center aisle, I believe, not that missing component of the auditorium. That's all I remember about that. As far as the amphitheater is concerned, I think the comment had to do with, gee, it looks empty. It doesn't look crowded.
That was it.
Yeah.
Right.
That's right, because we talked about during COVID time, we want footage during COVID time because we want to show the masks, but if we do it, it's not going to look overcrowded. I think that was the gist of the.
We're still in hybrid at the high
Yeah.
school only.
Yeah.
So we only have half the population.
And so unless we had something already on hand for crowded conditions in the amphitheater, we wouldn't be able to replicate that now for the video.
I think we might have some old photos, so
Maybe an event or something.
we could always put some of those in.
I
Because-
think that's a good idea. So, and I think we talked last time about maybe blending video with photos. If you can
Yeah.
achieve that technically, I think we
Yep.
called it the Ken Burns effect. So if you have a photo of the music room when it's crowded, you could Scott can continue to do a voiceover. It just would be over a still.
And was that a similar concern with the gym footage as well, that it didn't look so bad, or it didn't look like,
Yeah, I think that was the issue.
because it was empty?
Yeah.
And we have plenty of photos of how that can, I mean, just whether it's a athletic performance or our district-wide performances.
Yes.
We have plenty of pictures, so that's good.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if we did an all district photo, all district.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have, every year people pass out.
Oh, it's awful. Yeah.
And I don't know what music might have been referring to, if that was maybe district-wide
Mm.
performances, or, oh, it was probably something with the music rooms. I think those were empty too.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
We're in this conundrum of having footage of COVID
I know,
spacing, but it doesn't reflect the problems.
right. Okay. All right, so if that's everything, we'll move on to side-by-side photos. Any updates there?
Richard, do you want to share your draft?
Oh, I don't have it on my screen.
I can pull it up.
Could you? That
Yep.
would be great. Yeah, so I volunteered just to put together, and this is in PowerPoint format. So these side-by-side slides are just, pretty much all of them are one for one. And so the first slide, I tried to talk about approach to the school, where you see the existing photo and how the approach, where's the main entrance? Oh, there's the main entrance. And you approach it kind of awkwardly, whereas you see the rendering here, the proposed rendering shows how the frontal approach is much more dramatic, very apparent, how admin would be immediately adjacent to the front entrance. So this is a contrast side by side. That would have to do approach. And then hallways, the photos on the left are the existing hallways, and you have a variety of hallways. And then in the proposed, you can see we're in the new building, we're proposing very large, spacious atrium kind of space immediately when you come in, which has daylight up above and has glass so that you can see all of the community spaces adjacent to this main hallway. So that's hallways. Next subject was classrooms, and what we show here is a lot of natural light. In the photo on the right, it shows flexible seating with casters, allowing different kinds of learning modalities, whether it's individuals or small groups. Very easy to rearrange and clean. And so that's classrooms. Next side by side is lecture room. And what we're showing here is the existing lecture room versus new lecture rooms that we've done in high schools. The one on the lower right is for a high school. It shows the modern lighting, and it also has technology in it to allow for remote learning and collaborative learning from various locations, distance locations. Next is breakout areas. And what we show here is the only breakout area I could find. There probably are more, but we have a very limited number of photos, so I had to grab from photos that we have. This looks like a breakout area in a common hallway in the high school right now. I'm comparing that with a breakout area that's centrally located in classroom clusters immediately adjacent to faculty work areas, so that they become a focal point in those classroom clusters. Next is music room. And we have two rooms here. One is the existing music room showing inaccessibility, showing no daylight, whereas the music room on the right is a room that has daylight. It has a variety of lighting. It has also a flat floor with tiered seating that is furniture and equipment, so that the room can be easily reconfigured as needs change over time. Next is science labs. You have your existing science lab on the upper left. On the lower right is a high school science lab showing large group lab stations and lots of daylight. In fact, you can use these labs without even turning on the lights pretty much. And it has very durable finishes, including a seamless floor, which is great for labs. Next is shops. On the left is an existing photograph of existing conditions. On the lower right is a modern high school shop that again shows the proper spacing of equipment, ample circulation space, has emergency shutoffs for power equipment, it has daylighting in it. Next is library. Library on the lower right is a high school library, shows different types of seating, tables and chairs, and equipment, or I should say seating is movable so you can easily reconfigure it. Actually, that's a system that you have currently in your existing library, but the difference is library in the lower right is a little bit more spacious and very transparent. Next is auditorium. So comparing your auditorium with the new high school auditorium in the lower right, the point I'm making is that it's also an auditorium for community use as well as school community, outside community use, but it's also a learning lab for students. So students who are interested in theater or drama or music or dance, this becomes a lab for them to do their work in. So it's keeping students safe is of paramount importance. So even it has two catwalks, as you can see here, with different lighting levels for a thrust stage that can be reconfigured. It's perfectly safe for high school students to actually control the lights from there. We also have a catwalk above the stage. Next is cafeteria. We're comparing the existing cafeteria with a cafeteria in a high school that also functions as the commons or lobby, has uses throughout the day, functions as also the lobby for the gym or the auditorium. Again, lots of natural daylight. Next is the gym, similar story. The high school gym on the right, lower right, is a structure that is a sawtooth kind of structure with clear story windows that allow the structural components to be illuminated with natural light, has bleachers on both sides. So this is my first draft at a side-by-side, but it's in PowerPoint format. So it could certainly be used in voiceovers if Scott wants to voice over it, or it could be done in a series of one-by-one slides. Here's existing, here's new. So this is just for everyone's comment this morning.
I think it looks great, Richard. I don't know what I would suggest to change. I'd have to look it over a little more, maybe, but.
Sure. But anyway, this is just my first stab at it, but how you use this information in different formats, whether it's on a website, whether it's in a PowerPoint, or whether it's in a video, can be used in a variety of ways.
Hi, this is,
Oh, Ellen, go ahead. Go ahead.
are you sure?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I guess I'd look at this using the side-by-side photos. It's really a marketing tool to gain, just to gain enthusiasm and excitement for the project. I love that the proposed photos are larger. I wondered how people would feel about making the existing photos in black and white.
Yeah, I know. I thought about that. So, yeah, the new photos, the proposed photos are larger, and then, but some people might say, well, you're just, you know, you're stacking the deck. You're making the new look better than the old. And if you make the old black and white, then I'm further stacking the deck, skewing it.
See, I like that. I like to stack the deck. I think it's, I'm pro stacking the deck.
Okay.
Meg, this is Ariane. I've done these before. What you can do now, if you put on a website, they can fade. In other words, you show the old scene and you fade it to the new scene. That has a bigger effect than side by side sometimes.
That's a very good.
And what you're doing is, it's like, you know, here's before and after. If you ever done, Richard, I know you've done this, and if you ever seen homes that I photographed a house before we renovated, and people complete the same house. And so this is ideal for all the social media and using your website, using it more dynamically. You can do both. So you probably have a static one, but where people get excited would see when they see the thing come alive, it's a visual way, kind of almost like a video.
Yeah, no, I agree, Ira. That's a great idea. And then it's much more interactive. People get into it if they can click before and after, and then go to the next subject before.
Well, the other thing is you can have call outs. Over here where we never had this, we have this. So you take it to the next level, you make it an educational tool. So you're actually not just look visually interesting, you're also explaining why this space is different than the other space, the old space. So
Yeah,
then it becomes more of an education versus you say a combination of visual delight and also information that points out the key things of why this space is going to be better than what it currently is. Even though now it's functioning, you're saying, here's what the future's like, kind of thing.
yeah, the text is very, very helpful, whether it's in the static format or whether it's in callouts or in rollovers or whatever they're
The
called.
rollovers tend to be most effective, but you can do it both ways.
So people often don't see what it is they're looking at. And when they're looking at a website, they need to get information quickly. So that kind of rollover or whatever is engaging, but it also tells people, this is what you're looking at.
Well, actually, what you can do is have the whole building kind of in a plan. And when they click over it, it's kind of, they can take a kind of a video tour of the whole building and then say, well, here's the gym on this side, here's this. So it's a way of them actually seeing what the building is and engaging them in the tour. I mean, all these tools are available right now. I know you guys are aware of it, but you use these things, and particularly it's very effective in terms of, it isn't just individual spaces, it's the integration of all these spaces. And here, why don't you walk through us? So, and then when it's built, they can see, yeah, it was that way.
Yep. No, that's a very good point. I like the plan and pop-ups or whatever technique you use.
I mean, you can even have voiceovers, you know, it can be, you can click on it, say over here, if you look on the right and it kind of enlarges. I mean, we can go so many ways on this at just a degree. I mean, I know you need basic stuff right now, but I think as you're moving along and trying to get more support, the more visual engagement, well, no matter how many words you write, people are more engaged when they're visually engaged.
Yeah. So it's the content that's key, right, Ara?
Absolutely.
You need to have a good content, and then you just structure it in whatever way will work.
And I think that's the point, right? So Richard, when you and I talked about this was really, you saw this being a great tool to be able to engage with communities, for you to walk through the presentation, have an opportunity to explain it and walk through each slide. You know, perhaps this is the right format, but I think, you know, from, you know, one point where you're talking it out and you've got bullet points and you're hitting those bullet points, you know, there's depending on your audience, I think that this is going to morph. And I think that's where I think this is, you're absolutely right on. This is the content. This is the kind of stuff we want to understand and look at. And now we can take it and see how we can reiterate it in different forms, whether it be talking to a Zoom call where it may just be bullet points because you want them to stay focused. And once they start reading the text, it might be a little bit more of a challenge. They might get lost somewhere, or we did some things on the website to translate it to see what that might look like. So I think you absolutely hit the nail on the head with the content. And now it's just making sure that these are, you know, this is where we we see it. These are all of the sections that we want to talk about. Are we missing anything in this draft? Are there any other pieces of, do we need to show mechanicals? Do we need to show roofing? Is there anything in this draft that we're missing that we think we need to be able to put out there to help other folks see all of it? Because, one of the comments that I wanted to make earlier was that the facilities people have done such an amazing job keeping the building up that people don't understand really what it's taken to go down that road. So I don't know if there's more things like that we could add to it, but I think it's a great start. And Devin and I worked on some stuff we'll get to a little bit later as to what maybe some of those ideas are, but I think we need to think about all of those things too.
I do think the mechanicals are a big issue because you've got so many different systems working in different sections, which creates, discomfort for the people who occupy those spaces, either too hot, too cold, that type of thing. So I really like, and we do have some good photos of that, what our current system looks like. Some of them are just shocking. And then what a new system would look like, more efficient, doesn't take up as much space. That gives us more space for other things and increased comfort for occupants. The only photo that I would say we probably need a different one is the library, the current one, because you've kind of got a photo of the new one at the ground level. And I think it would be good to have a photo of the library at the ground level, especially because that second level we can't use, it's not handicap accessible. So I wouldn't even want to show that because it's not even a feature that benefits us in our current building.
You're absolutely right. And so the photos of existing conditions came from our own collection here. I'm sure you have many more photos.
Penny.
I just didn't have access to them. So all I had was what we had in our.
Yeah, we have plenty, and in fact, many photos of it's being overcrowded because the space is so small for the population. And that is where students go to study and to research and all of that. So it often is, we have to close it down after a certain capacity in normal circumstances.
Right. So where are those photos archived?
So I'm sure we have so many of them up at the high school. We also have, many years ago, we started to archive photos. So my secretary may have access to them, but definitely the high school. And maybe our old website, maybe Kat has some of them too. I don't know.
So who would we coordinate with to capture those?
I think between Kat maybe and Denise up at the high school, Denise Martin.
Yeah, I'll take a look at what we had on the last website. A lot of them were kind of just like no students around when we were taking photos, but I'll take a look again and see what we have and send anything that would be from that perspective. And do you want me to reach out to Denise to see if she has anything?
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay.
I'll have Natasha look as well, because we do have a district-wide place where those photos are. So I can look through that as well.
What do we do about images that you have with students in them? Should we blur the faces out or modify them?
Usually when we take photos, we keep in mind those students who have said and parents who say they don't want their child photographed. But, if we're going to go back a couple years, I think that's probably a good idea to fade out. So that's a really good point. Just because, some students have graduated, it's hard to double check. Yeah.
Kathy, can I also suggest, if we're going to go through, think of the three things trying to test here. You got infrastructure, you got the visual, what it looks like, the content, what's going on, what are new things that are going to happen that you can't do now?
Yeah.
In other words, future orientation. So if you think of it as past, present, and future, you want everyone focused future oriented. That's a marketing issue to do, because you don't want to dwell too much on, hey, that boiler's old. You all you got to do is show and explain that. Keeping this up over years is not nearly possible. Remember, we worked on a project where we completely focused on infrastructure because the infrastructure was so awful, but we had to avoid that. Why can you guys maintain it? Well, they couldn't find equipment to maintain it, so they had to jerry rig it.
Yep.
I don't think you'll have that issue, but I think if you talk about it, if you think of past, present, future, so you have the images before and after, you have the content, what's going on, and then more importantly, what can you do better and new with the technology and so forth, the lighting that explains the environment itself, how it's going to improve learning experience. I mean, all of you know this. It's just assuming someone landed from Mars and they don't know it, and getting them to understand why a new building is necessary, because that's the argument. And then you get rid of all the other taxes and all the other issues that kind of pop up in these things.
I think, you know, Richard said it probably best with the infrastructure is that our custodians actually have a trade. So it's just been a tradition here that we have highly skilled custodians, and they have been able to keep equipment running beyond their lifespan, which we are district-wide. We find times where there just simply aren't the parts that we need, because we've been able to give this piece of equipment longevity well beyond its lifespan, which is a testament to the people that we hire and their commitment. But the other side of that is, well, why haven't you replaced it? You know, and it's still in working condition, and we're trying to expand the life, of that to save money, for the taxpayers of Farmington. If it's working, we're going to keep that equipment going. But it really is quite a challenge for us when it comes to finding parts. But I have to say, this is all about the people that work in our school district. They are truly amazing, not just at the high school, district-wide.
You're right. I mean, it's like someone who has a vintage Volvo and he's trying to keep it going. I mean, your guys are good at this. They're very innovative and very resourceful. But if you accumulate all of the time and the cost associated with keeping this vintage equipment going, you got to wonder, but then it's frugal Farmington. Okay, so you're looking at it on a daily or annually, an annual budget for building maintenance, right? And no one's accumulating the total costs over the life. That's, forgive me, but I'm not sure anybody is.
Right.
And then when you're presented with the option of replacing it with something that is currently available, efficient, easier to maintain, it's a big nut to swallow for people.
The price tag is overwhelming.
Right.
And we do have a K-8 review, and we do have a high school review, and we know the cost of doing all of this, and it's similar to the cost of the project that we proposed. And
Right.
so, that can be overwhelming for people. And it, as we present budgets, it can be, and many people here have been part of presenting budgets with me, and it's like shock and awe when people see the price tag, because we have been so effective over time at keeping things going for as long as possible.
So this suggests the need for certain other kinds of information that needs to be presented in easy to understand graphic form, such as the total cost of your building over its life,
Richard, I think this is a good, I think, Kathy, I could share what we did in Mansfield. That was a big issue of maintaining 3 buildings, building 1, and where it made sense to do it. And that was a big issue. We focused a lot on that, even though the building is, a net zero green. But part of the sale was very much that you want us to maintain these 3 buildings, we can have a brand new building. So if you take it over 10 years, is it worth it? So remember, Richard, we did the projection out, and then people said, then they saw that, and then we compared to people having a house. They replace the windows, the furnace, compare it with their own living situation. Richard, the car is a perfect example. You have a car for 250,000 miles on it, and eventually replacing everything in it. Why are you doing that? So that appeals to people, is how they relate, because these multi-millions of dollars become very abstract to people. And so you have to put.
I think we have the numbers because, Richard, you have those numbers of let's just maintain, do nothing but maintain, and what that looks like.
Yeah.
And it's huge.
Yeah, we did talk about it with the building committee very, very early on, so we'll have to resurrect that and
Yes. Yeah.
maybe update it.
And we presented it, I mean, to everybody. I mean, everybody's seen the numbers, and what I think happened is we were afraid of putting actual numbers that we were held accountable for those numbers. So I think that there's ways that you can create a graphic around what was presented in very generic numbers, you know, just in relation to each other, without having to make it seem like these are the actual numbers, because we talked about that in a lot about how we were going to show those numbers, because it wasn't the end and how do you distinguish. But those are that is exactly something that we need to be able to put out there too, and I think it can be really easily done.
Okay, I have a new assignment.
I want to reiterate that piece is crucial in frugal Farmington. We cannot lose sight of presenting that information, just like you said, Richard, in a very easily understood, tangible perspective. I think let's be proactive and get that done now rather than chasing after it when someone brings up the other argument.
I think too, Richard, it's also kind of spinning that, you mentioned, and Kathy mentioned, we're always trying to protect the taxpayer. And, quite honestly, this is what we've been doing is really potentially putting good money after bad and wasting tax dollars. We are right now looking at a very, potentially impending roof project at the high school. We've put money in roofs last year at the high school, and from my perspective, it would just be at this point, especially with parts, we can't even find parts for large projects. So many of our capital projects, these are end of life. It's just
You're right.
It's a waste of tax dollars. I don't really know how to grab it, but
Yeah, so there's that aspect of it. And then also what it does is I think it hinders you from doing an improvement that might be helpful to the educators today for fear that it's going to be a waste, because there's a sentiment that, well, we're out of here anyway. Why do we have to fix up these rooms? It may be just a waste of money. So I think that's what goes on too, is that people are reluctant to do some improvements to a building that you may be abandoning.
Yeah, Richard and Kathy and Ellen, I'd be careful to use frugal Farmington. I would use the language investment. People who are frugal wisely invest in the stock market, or wisely invest, and switching that language into an investment for the future for the kids. I would not use negative terms only among ourselves, because that creates then that you folks are more defensive about what's going on. You want to be proactive about what's going to be. And
It's a very good point, Ira. Well, that's why you're here.
You want to look, you got to use terms that frugal people like, which is investment.
Excellent.
So the building, in a sense, is buying stock for the future of the community. And so, that's, it's not that everyone thinks that way, but, over the years of doing this, there's certain words that resonate better than that. And what's important with the group, and again, I'm not chewing you out or anything, is that you're always sensitive about taxpayer dollars. I'd avoid using those terms wherever possible. The money's the money. And the issue is the investment worth is the money worth the investment? And so the investment becomes the key language, not the amount of money being spent. Because then it gets into all that mill rate stuff. What does a urinal cost? And you don't want to go down those paths.
potentially too, you want to, I think we could get them in Farmington with protecting tax dollars. And I think you're right, Ira. It's about, investing and protecting.
And the future of the kids, and you keep using that language, then it won't be, you always feel like you're in a defensive posture that, are you using taxpayers wisely? Then that language tends to dissipate. Doing money in these campaigns, it's changing much the hearts and minds of what you folks been living with for years. And then the leadership saying, this is what's this all about. Or as you want to explain what the dollars are doing, but that's just, you don't have to defend what the dollars do. or where it's being spent, I'm sorry. You explain what the dollars are worth in terms of investment versus getting into these silly arguments with people who want to go down rabbit holes all the time.
So Richard, from us as a committee, is it beneficial? Obviously, we can get Devin to send this out to the full distribution, that just go through for content, get notes from people on what else people are thinking, what else should be included, just to make sure we have some solid content and we're looking at this in a complete view. Is that helpful?
So yeah, in terms of content, more photos of existing conditions. So
Okay.
like, for instance, the library, I don't have a good picture. So I'd like to see more pictures.
Okay.
Um,
And is there anything, like we mentioned the mechanicals, is there any other things like that, like Cara
Yeah.
mentioned, some
So-
gaps that we think we should be representing?
Yeah, so mechanicals are definitely something that we should do. Other kinds of programs that have not been addressed in these slides. I mean, I chose these spaces. Quite frankly, I started by looking for photos.
Yeah.
And that's what drove this content, is to have good comparisons, auditorium, auditorium, classroom, classroom. I couldn't find any photos of art rooms.
Oh, yeah, that would be a really good photo.
And so that's missing here, in my opinion. What's also maybe missing is overall impressions of the school. So I know you did a drone fly around the school. I don't know if we can grab some stills from that, because we can do rendered version of the proposed to give the overall impression. I mean, one point that we kept making early on is the compactness of the proposal versus how spread out. What is the term that was used? It was
Sprawl. Yeah, sprawl.
sprawl, right. So an aerial shot that shows the building sprawl, and then an aerial shot that shows the proposed compactness would be good. That's what's missing.
Because it would not only benefit the tax, I know, going back to money, it doesn't, on energy, right? It's more efficient.
Right.
It's also not as much roofing. Roofing
Correct.
is expensive. And the minute we finish the roof in a particular school, we start all over again because we do sections. And when we have these sprawling buildings like IAR and FHS, it's incredibly costly to have sprawling buildings when it comes to roof costs.
You're absolutely right. In fact, we did a diagram that analyzed the vintage of each roof section. You're perpetually doing roofing.
That's all we do.
Because the minute you do a roof, oh, now the other roof is outdated.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that would be good. So that sort of an aerial shot will allow us to talk about a number of subjects you just mentioned. The roof maintenance and replacement, the energy conservation, the amount of space it takes up on the site. Anyway, so that's what's missing here, is a side-by-side comparison of aerials.
Richard, let me ask you, have you, part of buildings, which is overlooked many times, is the accommodation of staff needs in terms of the main office, faculty offices, and that's appealing to internal audience. And if they're seeing there's something, I found it sometimes helpful, even though these are major areas for learning, it's also in terms of the infrastructure, the actual spaces that staff has to work in. Is there anything, in other words, the efficiency will be better in terms of running the building,
Absolutely.
managing the education.
You're right, Ira. That's a good point. That's also missing here, is a professional space for offices and staff. Things like pupil services or student services, guidance, the guidance suite. That's what's missing here. We can do side by side of those.
Because that would garner support from the staff itself, saying that you're addressing and thinking about what their needs are too. As of course, the primary needs are always the kids, but you can't have good, if you don't have the spaces, the people actually do the teaching and the management of the building.
Yeah.
you know.
What's also missing here, other than the gym, is PE. I don't know if that's important, but you know, it's missing here.
Ira, this is Ellen. How do you feel about sort of reflecting in something like this emergency type situations? We are experiencing them. I know we have photos. I could think of two situations. We have, you know, in the past, we have photos of tarped classrooms during the rain. We have sewage backups. So, and I don't know how far we want to go with that.
Well, I'm sure that has to do with Richard capacity. In other words, these buildings were designed for a certain use. They wore out their time. This is all patchwork we have to do because the building doesn't function to what contemporary way people use, you know, facilities we never think about. I mean, I found having those things and showing them always have effect in terms of understanding what you're dealing with. That you mentioned, that just the maintenance and sustaining it of, you know, can imagine a corporation that had a headquarters and it had 6 campuses spread apart, and each one needed a roof, each one had to deal with sewer issues, water, health. You know, I find explaining to the public, no matter how educated they are or not, what you deal with on a weekly, daily, or yearly basis only helps you. So there's nothing wrong with showing a tarp or sewer systems backing up, because the replacement of that is so expensive that it's better almost to start from scratch, because this wasn't designed for how buildings are used today. Is that what you're asking me, Ellen?
Yeah, just reflecting the emergency situations. I think it's important. It's just we would have to be careful how to reflect it, and I don't know if it's possible.
Well, I think you can have a you know, like a laundry list of what things you're just having to do because there's no choice in an emergency situation.
So I just want to be mindful of everyone's time. I do know that we presented a lot on the website, and this conversation I think would translate really well into that. I think there's some ideas that you're coming up with that I think would perhaps we've took a stab at, you know, just randomly, if it's some, you know, kind of direction that we want to think about. If that's, I don't know where we are on the agenda. I apologize.
You're right on time. So it's a wonderful segue. So we'll move right to the website update.
So there's a couple thoughts on what we did here. One was taking Richard's information and the side-by-side idea and what that could look like. And then we kind of sat back, we created a few different pages and ways to navigate through that. And then we sat back and said, okay, well, where would we put this? And so the feedback we got last time is that once you come to the website initially, there's just not, you know, a presence of these photos or something like that. So this was just a small piece that perhaps this becomes a part of the homepage. We didn't want to put another navigation in there, and it's all just for conversation. But I think as we look at this and what you hear, so for example, and we can make these smaller. I mean, this could be its own page. You know, if people want to see pictures and you want to put emergency and you want to put, you know, tarps and this and that. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to relate side by side. Just say this is what we are. This is where we're at, you know. The renderings that we have produced that are actually renderings of what we're proposing or what we've considered or what we're thinking of, you know, maybe there's a place for those specifically. And then to bring Richard's, you know, comparison photos, this was just a small attempt at is if we had a grid system and we had the different spaces that we're talking about. If you want to go ahead and click into auditoriums, it brings you to the auditorium page. And so perhaps there's just a way to really highlight what auditoriums should look like. And the side-by-side, I think when you're explaining it and articulating why those photos have access, where people might not be able to understand it or see it, when you have just a variety of different photos, we're not suggesting that the one that we're proposing looks like exactly this one. We're simply saying, here's a variety of different kinds of theaters. There's a variety of different ways we could take this, but compared to what you've got, anything is better than what you've got going on. So within this context, you know, this is where whether we put the paragraph, Richard, that you've developed, or it's just a matter of bullet points, or we could look at it and say perhaps it's just a more collage of the different pieces in that space. So, I mean, we quickly developed, you know, probably 7 or 8 different iterations, whether you wanted them on top or you wanted them on bottom, or, you know, but I think for conversation purposes, you know, what seems to be impactful, and I think back to Ira's comment about, you know, appealing to that emotion and getting to where people are seeing the pictures, and that's what's really, or I think even Richard, you said, you know, you only have a few moments on the website to really get somebody to engage. So what do some of these layouts look like? What are your impressions of them? Is there something you like better than others? And then we can continue on the back end to develop some of this stuff as you see fit. As Richard develops the content, we can continue to add these things. These are not live by any means, but like I said, once we look at these and kind of think about what we like, then it might help inform how we look at the homepage or where we put them, yada, yada.
Sorry, this
Okay,
is Ellen again. Oh, I was just going to say, if quickly, if there's any way when we're doing bullets, or if it looks okay, if it fits into maybe use a header like what's disruptive to education. Because I think Carrie used the word impact. Maybe we could use the word disruptive from some of the more recent renderings.
Can I suggest 2 things? You can have this index, Kara, and also talk what I'm suggesting. You have a floor plan where people can take the tour and engage in it where they want to go. So one is kind of interactive, the other is static. And so you might want to think having both. Some people like statically, or I want to see the auditorium. And some people say, you know, oh, well, let me go down, take the tour down this hall. Let me see what's here. And they have pullouts. And so that would appeal to people who want to take the tour of the building versus going to individual sites. So I would think in terms, and there's nothing wrong with having both of them. It's just that you go in there and say, do you want to take a tour of the building? Well, click here and you can, you know, here's our plan, and you can click anywhere and we'll get you in. It's not as complicated as it sounds, because that technology is there right now for websites. And then the other one is you can then have a list. If you want to go and learn a lot more about this auditorium and all its content and before and after, and stuff like that, then, you know, you have that also going on. So it becomes very comprehensive in terms of doing this.
You absolutely hit it in that when Devin and I were talking this through, there's no reason why you wouldn't have it 5 different ways. And whoever is using the website, as long as it's easy for them to navigate to get to the information that they want, then by all means. And that's where you can absolutely have that comprehension of everything that you want to get to. And so there was one where we put a button to indicate where you could go to Richard's PowerPoint, right? So that's exactly it. Where you want to do, we can put little widgets and things in here. Click here and check this out, or click here and check that out. You create one page and you can just put that link anywhere you want and design it how you'd like.
Kara, because this would, and Kathy, this would appeal to elementary and middle school parents, where they can say, look, honey, this is what the building's going to look like when you're going to be going to this new high school.
Right.
And they would sit down with the family and take the tour and see the building. So it has kind of a marketing side to it. Versus, there's, again, nothing wrong with having static stuff, but I'm also thinking the audience, you also going to be more affected by it. And those are parents in elementary and also lower grades in middle school. So you figure what's a 3-year project out, Richard? That kind of.
Yep.
So
So
probably elementary, I would say elementary and, you know, maybe 5th, 6th grade parents. They would love this kind of stuff. They would love to take that kind of tour and show their kids and themselves what it would be like.
yeah, so these photos are great. They are but they're in a photo album format. So, and this is the first time I'm seeing them. But I think that if we organize the photos in a way that people can navigate and understand what they're doing. So Ira's suggestion about linking floor plans to these is an intriguing one. You could have a floor plan of the existing building that you can tour through and see shots of the existing conditions. Of course, we'd be stacking the deck, right? We would show them shots that we wanted them to see of the existing poor conditions. And then you'd have another floor plan of the proposed building, and then we'd be showing pretty pictures of the future. But having those floor plans as a way to organize these photographs is an interesting idea, Ira.
Yeah, I think you can make it very visually appealing again. And I just always put myself in terms of who we're trying to reach, influence, and create an attitude that's positive about the project. And the more tools you give them visually and the information you provide, and you're being completely transparent about it, what's the argument? And so therefore, you're never in those kind of defensive positions anymore, where you're actually presenting the vision of what the schools are going to be like. And the most important one, they're done with their school year, is their 9-12 experience. That leads them to some career in college. So there's cause and effect. It takes the debate beyond the building.
Yeah, so we need to think a little bit more about the photographs. Can you go back to that slide you just were at? So you have some photos of existing conditions, what FHS really is.
I mean, and please understand, this was, I just dumped whatever in just to give you an idea of a sense of how it was graphically laid out. These are not the end images by any means. I just didn't want to, and I think once we get some of the pictures of the kids in there, I think it, you know, again, just building the content, but this is just simply visually what's impactful to you. What do you see that looks, you know, are they too big? Do we want to make them smaller? You know, I mean, some of those things, where does it fit? You tell me as you develop the content, I can develop, or Devin and we can work on developing around that content.
Kara, are there things that are out of compliance but grandfathered in right now in the building?
Yes.
Doorways,
Yes.
things really close up. You really want to get that. In other words, we're able to have it legally, but in terms of contemporary way we should do, dealing with disabled, moving a space, lighting, that always helps out.
Yeah, so so if we have a photograph, see the second photograph from the left, that's a shower. It's inaccessible. So, but I can't remember where that shower is. But again, if you had rollovers that highlighted what's the problem with that? So I see a shower. So what? What's the big deal here? Unless you are conveying some additional information, it's difficult for the viewer to understand if there's a problem here.
The other side too, Richard, I remember we had to do New London. We took a page about compliance on a federal and state level. Even it went into minutia. It was a big help in saying, this is what we have to do. This by law was what we have to do. And us in hospitals are the most highly regulated building projects in the world. And so having a list of what's, in other words, you're grandfathered in, but you shouldn't be there today. But these are compliance things that we have to do in the building that become part of the cost of building this building. Egresses, fire, safety.
That information exists.
Circulation.
Yeah, that information exists. We have previous studies that were done. We did our own study. There's an EASC report. A lot of that stuff exists, but we need to cite those things in the existing photos.
I can send over the one we did for New London. It was really helpful. It broke down and said, you guys want to build me a legal building? Well, this is what I have to do.
So can we go back out to the homepage and just take a look and see what that, because I know we've got a lot of ideas and information that we're wanting to include. And I just want to be more specific on where we want to show that and where it falls under. So some of these ADA compliance, I mean, we have top navigation bar. Where, you know, so in the statement of needs, is that a place where we can, you know, talk about accessibility and what that looks like, and you have a narrative wrapped around it that, you know, explains what that means and what that looks like? There's a comparison here where when I forget the woman who just joined the group last time spoke about wanting just to see pictures, you know, that was the opportunity for side by sides and just seeing, if you looked at that shower, anyone looking at it knows that there's something wrong with it. I don't think that it's a matter of what exactly is wrong with it. I think just looking at it, you know that it's just out of date. You know that it's, who's even showering in school anymore? So I think that there's a couple ways that we're looking at using this information and the pictures and the things behind it. So organizing this information is another piece to that. So I just want to, I want to make sure that we're hearing exactly what should be shown as far as the different pieces of content that we definitely need to be putting out there. And then let's talk about where they might belong and how that goes into it. Is that, because back to, you know, the draft of, well, what are we missing in here?
Kara, do you have a site map? Yeah, have you created a site map for the website?
The navigation bar, but I don't have a document that has it other than.
It's a flow chart you normally do when you do a website.
Right, we've been kind of, this was just a one-off of what the website had already been developed.
I'm sure.
No, I think you can work off it, but it's a way of looking at the site map where to structure the content. You know, I don't want to, you don't want to go blow up the site. What you want to do is site maps help reorganize, rethink about where should things go and what's the priority, the initial messaging and stuff like that. Because I don't think you're going to have a problem with content. I think it's going to be a matter of organizing it so people don't get lost in the site.
Right, and so I guess I'm curious to what other content we need to generate, and I think that we identified that we are going to develop a little bit more around the different side-by-sides, that we need to look at that budget piece. Devin, can you pull the sidebar out from the navigation on the side?
Over here?
Yeah. So we can translate that into it, but it kind of, this is a initial example of what the sitemap is. And then as we build it out, it existed before, and Devin and I have been just working on just making sure that the backside had a little bit more user-friendly appearance and ability, but we haven't done a full-blown, because we haven't gone down the full let's create a new website role. So I agree with you content-wise, having an outline that goes beyond everything. We've just been cherry picking whatever we could to kind of make it better for the meantime, I think, until you guys were on board to kind of help us, give us a sense of direction as to how we might want to unfold this and how present the information in the best way. So we're also looking for ideas or direction on what this should or could be, reorganizing it as well. But in the meantime, developing this content in these pieces as we have this conversation, I think is that we can keep it rolling as we get there.
So can I ask the group and you, Ira, can I ask? So I'm not sure exactly what you're under contract to do, whether it's to think about all media, all communication, or whether it's specifically for newsletter, or is talking about the structure of the website part of your scope?
Well, I would think it is. It isn't necessary. It's working what's already there and then suggesting how to organize and integrate it with everything else.
Okay.
And the website, social media, all that, if we create silos around it, then we want to make this as easy as possible for people to understand what's going on, but also that doesn't drive them frustrated. And so I think right now is a good time just to organize whose roles are what, and look at this as an integrated communication marketing strategy and saying.
I think you're wearing that hat, right? I mean, I don't have the authority to spend the committee's money, but it seems to me that if we could ask you to look at the website and maybe suggest a way to structure it that will be in sync with other media that's going to be developed.
Why don't we have a working meeting just about the website? And because it seems like a big topic to take on, and we are an hour into our meeting, so we could have a working group that really, maybe some of you are interested in being part of it, that really tackles the organization of the website. And I do think it's improved quite a bit, with Kara getting involved. And but I do think, like, globally, looking at how it's organized so it's more intuitive and people come to it, and you kind of, the way it's organized guides people, and so we could definitely have a working meeting about the website and really look at this in a more detailed way.
Sure.
Devin and I have a standing Tuesday meeting at 10:30.
Great.
if that's something that works.
So,
Yes,
yeah.
Kathy, you want me to be part of that, I assume?
Sure. Yeah, I think your ideas really help us to kind of see things with fresh eyes. So it would be really helpful for you to be maybe at the next one and just have a working meeting to talk about these things.
Yeah, Ira, I can send you the meeting information, and I'll send you the links and the dates.
Yeah, please. And I'll just, what I'll do, whatever you have, I'm just gonna look at objectively in terms of the viewer. That's all.
Perfect.
I don't want to, reinvent the wheel for you guys that worked hard on all this already. It's a matter of make it, when we got till maybe, December to figure this all out. And then, like I suggested in my plan, launch this right after New Year's. So let's just like get organized, decide the priorities of what information, and then organize what tools are the best way to get it out.
Yeah, that sounds
So-
good.
So we're a little late on the meeting. So the next item was tall timbers. And Ira, I was going to introduce you, but you've introduced yourself.
I'm
You've
sorry.
become a part of our committee already. So I just want to welcome you.
Thank you.
Ira has been working with my CAPS organization. That's a superintendent group and doing a fabulous job. We're just so happy that you've joined our team.
No, I just love this project, and I'm sorry if I look like a Budinsky. That's my Brooklyn background, and kind of grew up around the corner from Bernie Sanders. Not that politically it's a misstatement, but you get an idea that sometimes it gets me in trouble. So if I over talk and doesn't make any sense, just bop me on the head. I'm used to it. But I've done this for 25 years in over 70 school districts, and it really doesn't change that much. It's really engaging the community in a positive way. They want, particularly in this age of trusting leadership. That's all this is about, that they want to be able to trust their elected and chosen officials on behalf of the community. And by being transparent today and presenting the facts and laying it out and saying why this is better for our community right now, usually you win these things. If you go in and you're trying to defend the crazy taxpayer groups and loony bins out there, you're going to lose. It's a matter of just ignore the noise and go forward, because there's more people who support you underneath it all. And as long as they understand what they're supporting, they'll vote for it. If they don't understand, they stay home. It's pretty basic. And the target group are elementary parents. They're the group that decide these elections all the time. I've done research on it, and particularly the mothers. Then they tell their husbands, "This is how we're going to vote." So I don't mean to say that, but that's how I've done this enough to say that's what you want to get, because then it gets the rest of the community members behind us, and I think you can easily win this. I know you've been through a hardship before, and I think you've learned by it, and I followed all that, and I think, Kathy, you've done a great job keeping everyone involved with COVID on your website. I've never seen a better site page for being transparent as your site is. And I've been looking at a lot of school sites. So congratulations to you for doing that. So that's my overview. And this is just a communication, community engagement project. Yes, we're using marketing and public relation techniques, but that's just normal. It's like teaching. You just normally just do that. And I'll support whatever you folks need, or I'm always available if you know what to do. And I'll always ask the question I feel if it's, make sure I'm always representing who your community member is the best I can. Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you and welcome.
And just to that point, Ira, I think the committee can agree with me on this, that we're open to anything at this point. We brought you on as a professional member of our team for that expertise. So, I think maybe we even need to take a step back as a committee and say, let's reprioritize. We've been using kind of the same agenda,
Yes.
for a long time, because we've had things on the plate, but we're still, I think, struggle a little bit. What comes before this and what should we be working on? So maybe we can take some time before our next subcommittee meeting to step back with you and say, what do we need to prioritize and where can we help and where do we need to step up, and all
Sure.
those things. So I think we just need to regroup overall on communications and make sure that we're aligned with kind of what you see as our strategic vision, on top of the work that we've already done, as you've mentioned. But I don't want you to think that at any point you're butting in or, anything like that. So we look, and I hope, Richard can say the same thing. We're open. We're here as a committee and want to make sure that you're fully engaged in what we're doing and giving the guidance that we know that you can. So I think that might be a good next step for us, is to kind of, as I said, prepare us for the next meeting and think about, and obviously we have some work to do as well for communications, but what things do we really need to focus on, and what work needs to be done behind those things.
Yeah, Meg, one just thing, if you think of this project as 3 phases, the one is getting the information out, the other's engaging, and the third is the voting. That's all this is. It's just 3 phases.
Yep.
And we can then break it into those phases, use the tools, so it doesn't get complicated. So you're moving forward and not moving backwards.
Yep.
And so if we think of right now, we're just gathering the information, getting it ready to present. And then the second phase, we got it out. Now we have to engage the community,
That's right.
understand we're doing. And the third phase is just people getting out and voting. And that might involve outside this group. It can involve PAC groups, family groups, whatever. And I've done all 3. And I find if you think in those 3 phases, that's how it works.
Yeah, and I think that's perfect for us framing, especially in this moment in time. And technically we are still on pause. And I think the one thing we can do is focus on that first phase and really get what we need to get done around communications, building it, really understanding, how we structure that. And I think that's a perfect way for us to feel that forward momentum, even in kind of this moment of pause for us as a project overall.
And the final thought I'll give you on this, don't think of this as a building project. Think of it as a community enterprise.
Yep.
The minute you get into a building project, you're going to get in going down paths you don't want to do. And the building is a representation of what the community is about. It isn't the building, it's a project on its own. Even though there's nuts and bolts to this, and I'm not downplaying that, but how you get people psychologically engaged is showing they are part of the project, not outside of it.
Yep.
And that's how the engagement tends to work.
Thank you so much. We're going to move to approving the upcoming communications subcommittee meeting schedule. So that is agenda item D, and we have our meetings up until April here. So do I have a motion?
We might have lost a few of our people. I think Sharon stepped away, but I think
Sharon.
between Ellen and I think we can do it, right?
Megan, this is Ellen, are we gonna, we canceled the building committee for the 9th. Are we still gonna meet as a communications committee on the 9th?
Does anybody have an objection to doing that? I kind of, maybe based on this meeting, it might be helpful for us, because communications is going to continue, that we keep that one on the agenda. Is everybody okay with that?
Yes,
I think that makes sense.
absolutely. Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll just keep going. I kind of presented to the committee last night that, communications will be our focus through January. So I think that it would be a good way for us to kind of keep that continuity.
So do I have a motion to approve the upcoming communication subcommittee meeting schedule?
This is Ellen, motion.
Second.
Second, Megan.
All right. All in favor. This is,
Aye.
thank you. All right. And now we have a motion to adjourn. You guys are really working overtime.
This is a lot.
Motion to adjourn.
And second.
All in favor.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all so much. I really
Thank you. Welcome,
Thank
Ira.
you.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, Meg, nice meeting you
Thanks,
all
and
too.
welcome, Ira.
Thanks, everybody.